Welcome back to Rock Guitar Confidential with Scott and Ryan. Hey, were you at the Queensryche show this last week? Well, if you weren't, you have nothing to worry about. Scott and I were there. We're going to give you a full show review, and we're going to let everyone know why guitar solos are so important. Stay tuned.
Got our cans on.
Yeah, the template works.
Nice. Exactly. Sounds like a supervillain, man. Yes, the template has gone according to plan.
Awesome.
Superman will be powerless to stop us now. He has no wit to spare.
Yes, it sounds like Zod.
Exactly. Yes. Zod. He makes amazing fertilizer, too, I think. Right? That's the guy we're talking about?
Zod.
All organic Zod.
Right.
Your lawn will no longer have brown spots.
Indeed.
With organic Zod.
if only Zod had been at the concert to banish the dude who thought it was cool to mosh during Queensryche.
I've got to say that by the way, welcome to the Rock Guitar Confidential podcast with Brian and Scott, everybody. This is episode 20. It's
episode 28
of the podcast.
Right.
I'm Scott Allen. That over there is
Ryan Bowe.
And we had the great, well, thanks to Ryan's generosity, we had the great benefit of seeing an awesome show this week. We went and saw Queensryche with Marty Friedman with the opening band Trauma.
Yes, and actually that was the generosity of a student of mine. I'm not mentioning the names of my students on the podcast anymore.
Not anymore.
But he knows who he is, and he's awesome. Yep. He got us the tickets.
Thank you to
his family then ended up going out of town, so he wasn't able to attend, so he gave me the tickets, and that's why you and I went.
Yeah, and it was awesome, because we've been fans of Queensryche since forever, basically, since we were in the womb, basically.
Right.
And then, obviously, Marty Friedman is an unbelievable... I mean, he doesn't get here to the States very often, so seeing Marty Friedman live is always a blast. And a great band, amazing band. And then, actually, I got to give a shout to Trauma, because when we walked in, Trauma was playing, and they were damn good.
They were damn good.
I was really surprised how good those guys were. I mean,
Dude, way more melodic than I expected.
Yep, I was expecting to be more like a Slayer-y kind of thing, and it was much more melodic. It was much closer to Queensryche. I could see why they're on the bill.
Yeah, for those who don't know who Trauma is, that was Cliff Burton's band before he was in Metallica.
Yep, exactly. And that's kind of what they're known for. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Greg Christian was in that band for a short time. The former bassist for Testament was in that band for a little while, too.
Yeah, so Cliff Burton was in Ex Aegis originally. A very early iteration back in the late 70s.
Due to a time machine that we recently had access to, a time machine.
Yeah, just in case anyone's curious, you should definitely go out and get that new Ex Aegis album.
To hear the early Cliff Burton ideas. Yes,
right. That have traveled through 40 years.
Before anyone's really think that's not true. None of that's true. But no, Trauma was really good. I was pleasantly surprised how good that band was. I walked in, I was like, man, these guys are killer. This is great stuff. You know what I mean? And then Marty came up and crushed, and then of course Queensryche. I can't get over. I mean, I've been a fan of Todd LaTorre since he's been in the band. I thought he was incredible, but seeing him do it live, especially knowing that he was sick, he canceled like the previous 2 or 3 shows or something like that, and he was singing like that. I mean, that is unbelievable to be able to sing like that live. That's insane vocals. I mean, that guy is an unbelievable singer. He's incredible. And the band, I mean, here's my take, and then let's kind of volley back and forth. I think Queensryche is a very professional band. They go up there and they just
absolutely
lay it down. They have great segues between the songs. They really just crush. The songs were perfectly played and performed, well performed, all that stuff. And I thought Marty was incredibly entertaining and of course, great playing too. And what was your take?
Yeah, well, I loved all of them. Every band was great, but...
Trauma was the one I was most surprised by. Trauma was much better than I thought they would be.
Yeah, I had there's the Cliff Burton connection, so I thought they'd be thrashy.
Yeah.
I mean, and they were heavy. They rocked.
Yeah, they were definitely heavy. Yeah,
but just multiple guys in the band can sing.
Yeah, nice harmony vocals.
Yeah, exactly.
Great leads, great solos. 2 guys trading back solos and harmonies and stuff. It was actually pretty impressive. Good playing too. Really good players. I was sometimes when a band is really heavy, that kind of is code for me that they're not going to have really really good guitar players in the band, or they're not going to let them play. You know what I mean? But
the young guy between the 2 guitar players in Trauma, that guy was great.
Yeah. And really did his part well. He supported the other guitar player who was clearly like the guy who was originally in the band.
The legacy guy.
Yeah, exactly. And who was also great. Not to take anything from him either.
Totally.
But the really, really good band. You know what I mean? What do you think of Marty? That's probably the one I think that stuck out the most to you, you're saying, right?
Yeah, Marty absolutely stole the show for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, It's Marty Friedman, man.
Well, he brought his band from Japan.
Yes.
And it's no secret that I would like to move to Japan.
Although he was telling us the whole time they were all from Kotati, California.
That was also great. That was hilarious. His drummer, Chargy, was just awesome.
Yeah. Chargy DeVille, right? That's his
Chargy. Yeah, I guess it's spelled like charge. Like we're mustering.
Oh, but G with the E.
Right, like we're mustering the Rohirrim to do battle, right? But it's CHARGEEEEEE.
I get you. Yeah, really a great drummer, really good performer. I think everybody in the band was actually very good performing. You know what I mean? And great players, obviously. You know
I'll tell you what. So when you go see a band and I don't mean you're waiting for the hits, but you're waiting for your personal favorites in the set.
Yeah.
And then there might be a song that you haven't, it's a deeper cut that you haven't heard, or maybe it's a song you don't like as much.
Yeah.
And because you know the band, right? So you're kind of
patiently waiting through the song.
Yeah. And so there's a handful of songs in the set where you're patiently waiting for the next song to come up. I didn't really know any of the songs that Marty was playing.
The one off Dragon's Kiss.
Well, Dragon's Kiss, and then there was the Tornado of Souls thing.
Yeah, which was rad. That was so cool.
It was rad, but Omega Goe, the Japanese pop tune that preceded it, I thought was better.
Oh, I mean, to me, I don't know that song, so when I heard like the riff to Tornado of Souls, I'm like, oh, dude, this is gonna be rad. He's gonna play. I bet he's gonna just do the solo. I bet he is, and he did.
Here's in my opinion a mark of a great live performance. I didn't know that song before, but I know it now because I've been listening to it on Tokyo Jukebox 1 and 2.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
It's just added a whole new dimension to me. So even though I didn't really know any of the songs, I mean, except for the Tornado of Souls thing and.
Great solo, man. I mean, it's
dude, all of it,
classic.
Yeah, I was fully enthralled.
I thought the first tune was my favorite one he played. That was that badass riff, that heavy, just dun dun dun. I thought that was really good. That was probably my favorite thing he played. Was the first song. It was
great, man.
And then the one from the Dragon's Kiss from the solo record. I was like, that was probably my two favorite things. But the rest of it was nothing that wasn't good, and I wasn't as familiar with it. You know what I mean?
I was enthralled with all of it. I just wish Marty. I mean, I loved the other bands, but I could watch Marty's. I could watch that band. 2 hours, no problem, no fatigue, never get bored, always like totally glued to every performer. His bass player was great. His other guitar player was awesome.
Tone was great too. I remember that tone was just super.
She put it down.
Yeah, it's true.
Yep.
Now, as far as the Queensryche set, man, I'm a big fan of the new Todd La Torre era stuff, and they played a respectable amount of the Todd La Torre stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, you're playing a bunch of new stuff. Hell yeah, this is great. They played like the Perfunctory. They did, Jet City Woman and Empire and stuff like that. But they played, I would say, half the set was Todd La Torre era stuff. Yeah. And I was like, that's great, because that's great stuff. I mean, my favorite song they played was Don't Look Back. That's not the first album they did with them. That is such a good tune. It kicks ass, dude. I mean, and it's such classic Queensryche. I mean, if it came on Empire, you would not be like, it would not stop you in your tracks. Like, yeah, it sounds like it could be on Empire, or it could be on Operation Mindcrime. You know what I mean? It's great stuff. And I think it always pisses me off when legacy bands like that, who people perceive as having their heyday back, their heyday was like, 1990, and they really haven't done anything since. Like, but dude, they've done all kinds of stuff since. It's like, I don't know, I guess it pisses me off when people are like, only interested in the old stuff. They don't even give the new stuff a chance. Like, come on, dude, listen to the new stuff.
The new stuff's great. The most recent album is killer.
Yeah, the one before it was even better.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, and the one before that I thought was better than the first one they put out. I was like, you know what I mean? It's like every album's gotten progressively better. You know what I mean? And I just so many great tunes. I mean, they could do a whole set of all nothing but Todd La Torre stuff, and it would kick ass. It was,
my only thing, I wouldn't say a criticism, because it's not a criticism. I really wanted to hear "Take Hold of the Flame"
or "Queen of the Reich." I thought they would open with "Queen of the Reich." I thought that's
dude.
But they didn't. You know what I mean? But they played "Deliverance." They played a couple of "Enforce." They played some stuff off of "Warning" and stuff like that. That was great. And they actually, I think, I mean, I didn't do "Lady Wore Black." Thankfully, I'm not a fan of that song. They didn't, it's funny when La Torre's like, we're not going to play Silent Blue City. No one throw any tomatoes.
Yeah, I thought that was great.
It's like, that's kind of ballsy. This is like the band's probably biggest hit song they've ever done. And he's like, no, we're not doing that one.
Well, it goes to show he knows who the fans are.
Yeah. Well, the people come to see him now want to hear the, classic Queensryche stuff. That was classic era Queensryche, but it's like, that was like when they went mainstream, sort of.
It was as great as a ballad can get, but that's the song that I fast forwarded through on the cassette tape.
I love loved the song when it came out. I thought it was great. But after, like, it's like any song after the 60,000th listening through, it's like, all right, I don't have to hear that anymore. It's just been one of those ones. I kind of
right. But there are favorites that I could listen to. Again, "Take Hold of the Flame" gets me every time.
Well, I've always really liked the Thin Line off of Empire. I thought that's a great one. I love the song Empire. They played that one. That was great. I've always been a fan of that song. Jet Set Woman, I've always thought was kick ass.
Yeah, it sounded great too.
What's the one? There's a bunch of like deeper cuts. Resistance is cool off that album. I always thought that was great. I was hoping they played a little bit more Operation Mindcrime. I wanted to hear Speak. I was hoping they played like Speak
the Word
and Operation Mindcrime. I was hoping they played a couple more tunes. They only played like 2 songs. I think they played.
Well, they also closed with with
Eyes of a Stranger.
Yes, Eyes of a Stranger.
They played. I know they played Spreading the Disease. Did they do anything else off of Operation Mindcrime? I don't think they did.
I think that's it.
Yeah, I was hoping to hear like Breaking the Silence.
They didn't do like Revolution Calling.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many killer tunes on that record. You know what I mean? But I love Sweet Sister Mary too. But I guess they have to do the female vocals and stuff like that. But that's an epic song. That is such a great tune. That was eye opening for me. That's the first time I ever remember listening to a metal band and having like this epic sort of, I feel like I'm watching a movie sort of thing when I'm hearing that song. That was like the first time that had ever happened when I was a kid. I was like, oh my God, this is like a whole thing. It's all dramatic, it's a concept and stuff.
Album.
Yeah, but I remember like, I listened to the songs kind of one at a time though, even though I know it's a concept album. I was kind of just listening for the song. But when I heard Sweet Sister Mary, I was like, that is amazing, incredible what they did there. And that was the first time that really opened my mind up, because before that I was listening to like Van Halen, Def Leppard, Whitesnake, Metallica, Dokken. I wasn't really thinking about anything too deep other than killer guitar riffs and killer solos and good vocal melodies. But that kind of opened my mind up. Wow, you could do something more ambitious with music. It was surprising to me. I was kind of blown away. Maybe what was your experience with that album in the first?
Well, by the time I got to Operation Mindcrime, I had already been primed by the greatness of King Diamond.
That's true. You're a little bit ahead of me on that one.
So I knew it was a concept album, so I was fully on board.
I was coming off of like the Whitesnake '87 album and listening to like Winger and like Wait, and what else? White Lion, Dokken, that kind of stuff.
Dude, I love that first Winger album so much.
I love them all, dude. I gotta tell you, there's not a single Winger album. I mean, my least favorite is probably 4.
I was gonna say 4, the one with like the soldier on it.
But there's some great stuff on that album still too. It's not like it sucks or anything. But the Karma is killer too. I'm not sure if you've listened to that one. That's a great record. They're dropping a new one soon too.
Oh, nice.
I think it's called 7. You know what's funny? You know what the new Extreme album's called? 6.
All right.
By the way, have you heard the new Extreme yet?
I'm aware of it because there's the Rick Beato thing out there.
Oh, I haven't seen that, but the solo is off the chain.
I've already. It's already. Well, you know what's fun is that there's a great guitar player playing a great solo, and I've heard other people talking about it. There's a buzz.
Yeah. Well, because the solo is off the chain, man.
Right. Before I haven't heard it yet, but. I'm waiting. Yeah, I'm going to savor it.
The song is very good. It's a good song. It's a good Extreme song. If you're a fan of Extreme, you'll like the song. But and it's got good hooks, good performances, everything. Rhythm guitar is killer.
Well, it's Nuno Betancourt.
But the solo is just wow.
The solo is extreme.
Yeah, it is extreme. And then the new Winger is the same thing. It's a little bit. I would say the new Winger that I heard is called Proud Desperado. It's kind of reminds me of like a cross between like Pull and 4. It's somewhere, but it's a little bit more progressive than like the early Winger stuff. But it's heavy, kind of like Pull, if that makes sense, and still melodic, but great everything. Obviously, everyone in the band's incredible. So
nice.
We've talked about this on the podcast before. No need to beat a dead horse, but Winger is probably the most unfairly maligned band in the history of rock. That's a great band. There's just nothing ever bad about that band. You know what I mean? And anyway, there's a lot of good stuff coming up on that. And the Queensryche, their new record is Digital Noise Alliance. Killer. Everyone, if you're a fan of Queensryche, it's really a crime if you don't check out their last.
Is it a mind crime?
No, it wouldn't be a mind crime. It's more of just a regular crime.
Okay, it's important to distinguish what kind of crime.
I got a call from Pat Benatar. It's a crime of passion.
Oh, nice.
But you guys, you owe it to yourselves, if you're a fan of that band, to go check out the last 4 Todd La Torre era Queensryche records. That's the Queensryche, the self-titled, and then Condition Human, The Verdict, and the last one's Digital Noise Alliance. All of them are great. I mean, if you took the best songs off those 4 albums, I would absolutely rival the greatest hits of the previous Queensryche. So,
great stuff.
It's great. And Marty Friedman,
Tokyo
amazing
Jukebox
stuff.
Volumes 1, 2, and 3 is the most recent.
Now, I don't know Trauma's records, but if you go into wherever you get, either streaming or digital music, just put the band Trauma in there. I'm sure. I got to tell you, pleasantly surprised. I was probably the one I was most eye-opened by. Like, wow, those guys are really good. I was surprised how good they were. So, and another great concert here in downtown Sacramento, the Ace of Spades. So
good. Cheers to Ace of Spades. Great venue.
Exactly, great venue.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into that's our review of the concert. Whenever we do a big show, like we go to see a band, we'll probably sit and spend 15, 20 minutes talking about the show. So everyone gets a little heads up. And if the bands are coming to your neck of the woods, please make sure to check them out. Support live music, people. Rock and roll lives off live music. We're not, no one in Queensryche has a perfume brand, as far as I know, or clothing line. So you've got to support those bands by going and buying their merch and seeing them play live. So.
I mean, what would Queensryche perfume smell like anyway?
I don't even want to know. Yeah. I don't even want to know. But today's subject is we're going to talk about what, Ryan? We talked about this right before we started today. That's our.
Well, so the show got me thinking about the importance of the guitar solo.
Yes. Which, when we were kids, was self-evident.
Right, yeah, totally.
Seems like there's no need to even discuss why it's so important, because it's, of course, every song has to have. It's really, starting in the 50s, going forward, every song had a great guitar solo.
Chuck Berry, Johnny B. Good,
Scotty
starts
Moore
with
from
a guitar.
Elvis. Yeah. I mean, if you think about, Beach Boys, great solo. I mean, you name it, starting from the 50s on. And then, of course, the 60s, all the great guitar heroes. You got Clapton, Page, Beck, Hendricks, Pete Townsend, David Gilmour, Tony Iommi.
Yeah.
You name those guys. And then you get into the 70s, you got like Schenker, Blackmore. Later the 70s, you got, of course, Iron Maiden and Rush and Van Halen and then Randy Rhoads.
Judas Priest,
exactly. And just, God, who wants about UFO? Great stuff. And then in the 80s, obviously, Van Halen continuing to hold the crown. But then, you have all the shrapnel guys, Vai, Yngwie, Satriani, really all the way up until the mid 90s. It was like self-evident you need to have great guitar solos as part of what rock is. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then for some reason, when we all know, I'm going to say, when the grunge apocalypse showed its horrible face to the entire world, it became like, no, you should be terrible at guitar. It's good to be bad. Bad is good. That was sort of the upside down. Cats were living with dogs, that kind of thing. Everything kind of went sideways for a while. It was like, no, if you're terrible, that means you're good. It's like,
yeah, well, and we've chopped up why the record companies wanted it that way. But let's make the case for what a great guitar solo does for a song.
Well, I'll go with the complete someplace you wouldn't expect. Look at "Smells Like Teen Spirit." That song has a solo in it. A solo. I'm doing the air quotes. But
I was thinking about that, actually.
But that actually is a part of the song that people would miss if it wasn't there. And so it really solves the same function as a solo would solve.
I wonder if Cobain actually played that, or if they had a session guy do it.
It was terrible enough that it was probably Cobain. You know what I mean?
I wonder how many takes it
probably
took.
50 takes for him to do that. I mean, he's so terrible. But that being said, it still played the same function as what a solo would be. It was a terrible, terrible version of it. It's like played by a complete hack. But it was like,
true.
It was still the same sort of. I mean, Pearl Jam was never shy about playing solos. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So I think it was more marketing than I think even the bands themselves. Because when we hear the bands, even bands like Korn would talk about how big influences Steve Vai was on them and stuff. I'm like,
well, sure, because they were playing 7-string guitars.
I guess, but I always think, well, if he's such an influence, why are you so terrible? I don't understand.
I think the answer would be practice.
I guess, yeah, maybe they're not putting the effort into it.
Or maybe talent.
Yeah, I think talent's overrated when it comes to being a great guitar player. I think that practice and sweat is always more important than talent. You know what I mean? When it comes to that sort of thing.
Totally, but it helps to have, some people have a more innate sense of rhythm and
melody, yeah, or both sometimes. Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
and some people I think are more, prone to have a good ear generally.
Yeah. I think that's one of the hard things as an instructor. You have to, when you're trying to teach someone how to play solo, is always like, well, just hear the music in your head. And then for some people, there's nothing happening. If you were to plug a cable into their ear, there would be no music happening in their head.
And I've got to give a positive shout out to Tim Henson from Polyphia. I was reading, I think it was on like a YouTube comment section or something.
Oh, cool.
And someone chimed in and mentioned he had taken lessons from Tim Henson. Mm-hmm. And Tim Henson was really big on, you should only be like, how did he put it? It's like it should only be about what you're hearing.
Yeah. I agree with that. And I think when you solo, that's the thing. You got to hear the music here first before your fingers do it. Your fingers don't lead the way. Your
Scott
ear
just
leads.
pointed to his brain, by the way. Everybody.
Well, you got to hear it in your head first. That's where all of it comes from. You know what I mean? It's not, but your fingers don't tell you. You tell your fingers. You know what I mean? And I think the key is learning how to the challenge is everyone wants to jump straight to that, but you have to develop craft before you can do that. You know what I mean? It's almost like a pitcher. Like, yeah, just place the 90-mile-an-hour fastball in the corner, in the outside corner. Just place it there. You can't start there. Right. You have to spend countless hours throwing and over again to be able to get your speed up, and then you steadily work on your control. It's the same sort of thing here. You have to get that, or like if you're going to do live speeches or something like that, if you want to do it in multiple languages, you need to be fluent in that language before you can speak in that language. It's the same sort of thing. You have to do that. I think that's the part a lot of people miss, is that you have to have the craft in the first, then you can use your ear. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's not to say you can't use your ear every step, but your capacity to use your ear is going to grow exponentially as your skill grows exponentially. You know what I mean?
Well, just as you and I are talking right now, I'm not thinking about I'm really not thinking about what I'm going to say next until I hear what you have to say. So number one, we're improvising.
That's true. Yeah.
Right. Number two, I'm not thinking.
That's actually what it says on my script right here.
Yeah, that's
on the script. This is the part where we improvise.
This is the part where you were going to say that.
Yes, exactly.
And I just thought you were clairvoyant. So there we go. I didn't know that I was going to use the word clairvoyant.
Yes,
right.
That's a good word. There's actually a great Iron Maiden song too, by the way.
Ah, yeah, nice. Yeah. Yes, true.
Seventh son of a seventh son.
Indeed.
Sorry, that's really not helping them.
Kind of a much maligned. It's
a great
Iron
record,
Maiden
man.
album.
Die with Their Boots songs on that record.
Yeah, they got criticized for having synthesizers.
What the hell was going on in the late 80s? Like, if you have synthesizers, that's no good.
You know what? I'm going to make an admission on this podcast.
Oh, okay.
I like Judas Priest Turbo album.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, there's great songs.
And I also like, Ram It Down, and I also love Jugulator too. And I also love, if you go all the way back, Painkiller is great, and so is British Steel.
Oh, well, Painkiller is legendary, and I think that's agreed upon. But
that being said, though, I mean, there's like, you can like all of it. I don't understand why people feel like you have to choose. It's like, oh, I either like Painkiller or I like Turbo. It's like, well, no, they're both great.
You can like all of them. And Ram It Down is much maligned album.
Yeah, I don't get that either. It's, it's weird. I mean, everyone can agree on Screaming of Vengeance, in Defenders of the Faith, British Steel. Thank you for listening to the Rock Guitar Confidential podcast with Brian and Scott. Please make sure to rate and subscribe to this podcast. Hopefully you're enjoying understanding why guitar solos are so important. Let's get back to the show. So yeah, there's a couple of bands that I've kind of have solos that I appreciate, like bands like Pantera. It's System of the Down, which I guess in a sort of way do solos. Rage Against the Machine, those guys that kind of have kept in the darkness of the late '90s, early 2000s, kind of kept it going. And I think that it was more just I don't even know if they really cared about the guitar solo part.
So here's why solos are great.
Yes,
all right.
One of the many reasons why.
But here's why I think they're back. So we were just talking about Extreme's new track, and Nuno Betancourt's getting a lot of attention, rightfully so.
Because the solo is amazing.
For his monstrous solo, okay?
And the song Rise, by the way.
Yep. So here's why. Everybody can identify with trying to sing. Mm-hmm. Playing a guitar solo is a way to sing when you can't sing.
Sure. I think people would probably see a guitar solo as more of an impossibility than singing, because I think I mentioned before that everybody thinks they can sing. Like everybody in their head believes, hey, if I just open my mouth right now, I could totally sing awesome. It'd be amazing. But nobody looks at a solo like the solo and think, oh, I could do that. And everyone's like, they throw their guitar away and they run away because they see they're so intimidated.
Well, that's Nuno's thing.
It's like the Eruption. When people heard Eruption back in 1978, they said, oh, okay, I guess I can stop playing guitar now.
Well, I'll tell you, like we seeing Marty Friedman recently.
Yeah.
I thought, like, of all the guitar players up there, and they were all excellent, mm-hmm. I would humbly suggest that, you and I could join Trauma and play all the stuff.
Sure.
You and I could join Queensryche and play all the stuff. Speaking just for myself, I can't do what Marty did.
Well, his style is different than yours. You know what I mean? I think that, and it's like there's things you do Marty couldn't do. You know what I mean?
Wow, really?
I know that for sure. It doesn't matter how good a guitar player you are. There's stuff there's holes in your playing. There's going to be. And there's stuff that other guys do it's amazingly better than what you do, and you can do things they can't do, because the guitar is a very personal thing. It's almost like, the way you speak isn't going to be the same way Marty speaks. You know what I mean? It's a different thing. So I very much push back on the idea of better. Like, this guitar player is better than that guitar player.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say better, but but there are aspects to the way, number one, there's zero barrier between what Marty thinks and then what he plays. Like he's completely 100% broken down that wall.
Well, he's a great player, and
he's elite,
and he was elite when he was 18.
Yeah, right.
I mean, he's
totally
incredible. But that being said, I think if you sat down and you worked on the material for a little bit, you'd be able to play what he plays. I think the challenge is, it's not, see, this is what I think, if you guys were improvisationally going back and forth, I don't know that he's necessarily a better guitar player. I just think he's going to do his thing and you're going to do your thing. It's like, who's to say, who's more, it's whatever appeals to whoever, you know what I mean? I think that's what it comes down to.
Well, that's very kind and generous.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say it's about better or worse either. Maybe I should rephrase it.
I think people get too hung up on better or worse. I think especially when it comes to anything in the arts, it's always subjective. It's like arguing about whether purple is better than yellow.
Except for Nirvana, we can all agree that. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
that's just like brown, yellow baby poop in a burning dumpster.
I'm gonna lay my cards on the table here. Whatever you think is great is fine, listener. If you think that Katy Perry is the greatest,
I wasn't ripping on Katy
the greatest, artist who's ever existed, and their music means more to you than anything else, and it's the greatest achievement that mankind's ever made, then you rock with that, man. Whatever you got to do. If you think I don't know that Taylor Swift's is the greatest songwriter that's ever lived, better than Paul McCartney and John Lennon, then you're right if that's what you think, because it's subjective. Honestly, at the end of the day, there is no definitive anything.
Okay, so who are you and what have you done with Scott?
I'm just laying my cards on the table, man. Now I know I have my favorites, just like we have many times in this podcast laid out before, and I agree that that's what I think is the best. But just because I think it doesn't mean anything. This what I think is what I think. That's literally the start and end of it.
So,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. So. Let's get back to Marty Friedman.
No, Marty Friedman's awesome, by the way. And I've respected the shit out of his playing.
Yeah.
Actually, he's the reason I started becoming a fan of Megadeth. Because I was not a huge fan of Megadeth before. Then I heard wait, Marty Friedman joined that band?
Yeah.
Hell yeah, let's check this out. And
let's not forget Cacophony. And
I was a fan of his solo record and Cacophony before he joined Megadeth. And I was like, that is what I'm about. Then when I found out he joined Megadeth, I'm like, that's cool. And he's just playing over Mustaine's riffs.
Yeah, there's just something so free and fearless about Marty and the way he plays that I really respect.
Incredible player. I love his playing too.
Yeah.
I always have thought he's just an incredible player, and he's a great performer. I gotta give it
so great.
Really held the crowd in the palm of his hand, which was awesome. And I was surprised how many big Marty fans there were there. Yeah. Considering it was a Queensryche show. Because I know there's definitely some crossover between Megadeth and Queensryche fans. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are both. But there was a lot of people really, really into his set. Yeah. And I was surprised how into the set.
Dude, imagine how many at least decent guitar players were in the audience.
Probably quite a lot, because Queensryche's got a lot of guitar fans too.
Yeah, totally.
Not to try and discount Trauma, but Trauma is a much lesser known band compared to the other two. You know what I mean? And I thought it was stunning. But I mean, when it comes to the solos, though, I think that shows you that the reason that I became more interested in Megadeth, because Marty Friedman was in that band, is a sign of how important the solos are. And if you look at any classic rock and metal album in particular, a lot of it, you can those solos are just as important as the vocal hooks.
Yeah, and because of the way an electric guitar with a lot of gain works, because of all that sustain, and you can bend strings and articulate various microtones as you play it. Playing the electric guitar in that way is the closest thing to singing with a human voice that isn't singing with a human voice.
Same as like a violin with that sustain with the bow. It's the same sort of thing, and
totally.
it has that same human. And then also guitar is so touch sensitive too, like your vibrato and your bending, the way you attack the note with the pick.
Yeah,
can make everything sound totally different when you do that.
So now, Scott, you'll appreciate this since you have a long career making instrumental guitar music.
Yep, that's true.
I'm a big fan of great singers. Shout out to ex-Aegis vocalist Judith Morgan. Yep.
On this podcast several times.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I was really surprised at how, I think Marty stole the show. It was just like Marty just got up and he was the front person and sang for his band.
Yeah.
Right. The entire set.
I wonder how much of that's our perspective as guitar players. Because I can tell you, as a person who plays and performs instrumental music, it's very divisive in the sense that for some people, they'll come out and say, oh, I love the song. And some people come up and say, oh, it's basically like you did a guitar solo for an hour.
Yeah. And I'm just trying to get to the roots of why a person would hear Eddie Van Halen play a Eruption or a ripping solo or something, and for that person, that's why they get inspired to go pick up a guitar.
Yeah.
Which is why there should be great solos in great rock songs.
Yep. I agree, and
You
even
know?
great pop songs too. If you look at
Sure.
I think any Journey or Def Leppard song, solos are right there. You know, look at even like Foreigner, Loverboy. God, going back to A's, even any like Michael Bolton song or like Lionel
Sure.
Richie song will have a great guitar solo in it. You know what I mean?
Great solos.
Like what's the guy the Sunglasses at Night? Great guitar solo in that thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's like a bunch of any pop song.
Well, think about the influence that Nile Rodgers has had in music.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and then going, look at guys like Steve Lukather and all the great records he played on back in the 80s, and all of them had great solos. Same with Mike Landau, same with, many other great session players who kind of are famed for Larry Carlton, you name it.
Right. So if you're the guitar player, then,
But those songs are elevated by those solos.
they're elevated by the solos, and that's the moment where as a guitar player, you get to have all the attention on you and express yourself in the same way that the vocalist.
But
gets
I
to
think one
the rest
common
of the song.
misconception that people have about solos is it's such a self-congratulatory thing, like, oh, look at me, I'm so amazing. But it's actually it really is a functional part of the composition of the song. It actually it's a segue from one part to another. It's an instrumental interlude that happens to also be a solo, and if it's done well, it very much elevates the song.
Should lift everything.
Exactly. It's like a crescendo. It's basically like the climax of the song, and then it goes to usually there's a breakdown and there's a chorus out after that or something like that.
Right.
Which is like
So the 90s was, a bunch of showing up for the song and then never getting to climax.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's a bunch of climax interruptus going on in there. I mean, I don't know. I think I've kind of evolved in because back in the 90s, I was just an angry, pissed off, like this, everything sucks kind of dude. And I think I've kind of met enough people who are different from me, who didn't come from perspective as being just guitar players. Because I was, I've been a guitar player now for 37 years now. So there's way more of my life that I've been playing guitar than I haven't. So I don't remember what a 10-year-old me thought because before I played guitar. But meeting people who don't play guitar, they don't have a perspective like that. So to them, there's no difference between like a Pearl Jam song that has no solo and like a Van Halen song. It's just all song, and they don't really even care either way about the solo. And I wonder how much of that's just my perspective as a person who always saw it through the lens of a guitar player, that I missed the solo so much. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, as you also care about music.
That's
and
true.
So do I, right? There's some people that just don't care about music, and
That's just a thing in the background. Yeah.
right. There just are those people. They just don't have that part of their brain.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
true.
know.
They're
right?
not. They're not on that musical side. And
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but I definitely feel like all the music is elevated by having instrumental, even if it's not a guitar solo. Although that's like the highest level you could do. But if there's like a cool keyboard solo or bass solo or something like that, any kind of solo instrumental break is a good part. It's a good thing for the song as long as it serves the song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? One thing I would say that it can when soloing goes wrong. There are some bands though that definitely kind of like, to me, I'm a gigantic Dream Theater fan, huge fan. It's one of my favorite bands. Actually, probably my third favorite band of all time is Dream Theater. So they're right behind Rush and Van Halen in my book. But they very often, and I'm not criticizing because this is just a creative decision that they make in the band. They'll have a song going along and then they'll just sidewind it for 4 or 5 minutes, go on this instrumental crazy track and come back. And it's like, it's cool. And I understand that's kind of how they write. That's their thing. But it's like, man, this would be so much more effective if it was just like, a 24 bar solo that traded back from 12s back and forth.
Yeah,
and then back to the song,
There's been moments when I've been at the shop and I heard an instrumental, something going on that I thought sounded cool for a moment, only to find out that they're playing the Grateful Dead in the shop that day. No. Right, like Darth Vader.
Yeah.
No.
I think throw yourself down the mine shaft.
Yeah, I know. And it's I guess that's a good example of.
Sometimes it's Fish too. That's the other one. They'll sometimes.
I just don't. And there's some stuff that I've heard Trey Anastasio play, like melodic. moments.
Everybody in that band is great.
Yeah, just so great. Yeah, totally.
I don't date the compositions though. That's the thing that sticks.
Right, compositionally, I feel like that one song should have really been like maybe 4 different songs.
Yeah.
That could have all had their awesome.
Here's what I'll say.
Guitar solos.
This is art though, and people are going to have their own opinions about that. To you and me, that's how we feel about it, and we wouldn't write. See that? Here's what I love about it. We're artists who put out our own music, so it's one of those things like, okay, when we write our songs, we don't do that. But this is your art. You do what you're going to do. For me, I'd prefer if you did this, but that's your art. You do what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And I'll do the same. It's like, and everyone's going to go their own way and do what they, much like Fleetwood Mac taught us. We can go our own way.
Your own way.
Exactly. And damn it, I saw you coming to that too.
You saw me coming.
Man.
Yeah, man. I was. Yep.
I think that's just the way it is. You can't like. I think art is one of those things where it's like not a good or bad. It's all preference. You know what I mean? At the end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, I think, well, I'm not sure if it's like I'm not sure what comes first, the chicken or the egg, but I think society benefits when better quality art with more virtuosity is what's popular.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that could never happen.
But no, you know what's funny though? I think that music and art in general is going in all directions at all times. It's just a matter of what the spotlight tends to focus on in that particular moment. You know what I mean? Like I don't think like when when rock died in like 2000 or whatever, it's like, well, it didn't really die. It's just still there. It was still doing the same thing. You know, those bands that everyone loves are still doing their thing. You may not be paying attention to it, but it didn't go away. You know, blues never died, jazz never died, funk and R&B never died.
True.
You know what I mean? It's just a matter of what people want to pay attention to. If you look at,
I'm pretty sure grunge died.
No, they didn't. There's still like neo grunge bands doing their thing too, and any genre that has any kind of a following of any kind, it makes me sad too. But they'll never really, even like coffee shop acoustic singer songwriter stuff has never
and
gone
that's
away.
great.
You know
Totally.
what I mean? So it's one of those things that like, I think music is going in all directions at all times. It's almost like the universe is expanding in every direction at all times.
Okay. I like the physics angle.
But that being said, it's what your reality is what you tend to focus on. So if like you think what's the most popular thing, well then it's okay. Right now it'd be what, like Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion and Machine Gun Kelly, Lady Gaga. You know what I mean? That's like
I am happy to report there's been a real downtick in MGK requests during lessons. Yeah, man.
Sadly, all made up by Post Malone requests. Sorry, man.
No, again, no.
Just when you thought you were out of the haunted mansion, the door is actually just
and there's Post Malone.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
no,
making sounds.
He's like, I'm thinking about getting another face tattoo. That's a good plan, dude.
Which, hey, more power to him on the face tattoos. I'm just talking about the music. You can tattoo any part of your body
that's the main
you want,
thing he has
and
going
that's
for him.
fine.
That's not a side thing. That's like his whole thing.
I just don't know what he's good at.
I know. I agree. Maybe someday
I'm sure he's a nice guy.
Maybe someday
He seems like a really nice guy.
that bounty of yours will be fulfilled, and someone.
I could totally hang out and have a beer with Post Malone, and I'd watch a Kings game with Post Malone. We'd have some like loaded tater tots and a beer, and it's like he seems like that would be great. I just don't want to hear him make sounds.
I'd like to have some Post cereal with Post Malone. Awesome.
Captain Crunch by Post Malone. Yeah.
Awesome. Actually, that's a great Red Beach tune.
Post Malone mini wheats.
Yeah, exactly.
There we go.
Perfect. Post cereal by Post Malone.
I hear Post Malone's very high in fiber.
Every cannibal I've talked to says that. I don't know. It's funny that I'm more and more.
Post Malone is dropping off my mail right now.
Because we got to start wrapping up in a minute, but we're more and more.
We have to start rapping.
Yeah, rapping exactly.
Listeners, we promise Scott and I will never rap on this program.
I don't promise that. The day may come where it's necessary.
Not because we dislike rap, but I can only imagine.
Yeah.
I am never going to rap because I would suck at it.
There you go. That's good. That's good reason.
That's my reasoning.
Kurt Cobain should never play guitar.
Right.
But anyway, no guitar solos. You know what's funny? I remember being so raged about this when the grunge thing happened because I, grew up on amazing guitar players. And by the time I was, in high school, it was not cool to be a good guitar player anymore.
Or a good singer. It wasn't cool to be a good singer.
Or write good songs or any of that stuff.
Right.
But it's one of those things now where I think it's inarguably makes things better if you have good musicians, and good musicians want to play on music. And so I think that's a sign that you have good musicians in your band, that they're solos. Whether it be keyboard solos, guitar solos, whatever it might be. And that's something that is at least speaking from the view of rock and roll. Rock and roll has always had solos. There's never been a time when there wasn't solos until the grunge thing happened. Literally from the 1950s all the way up to the early to mid 90s, every genre of rock and roll had even Ramones played solos.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they weren't great, but they still played solos. You know what I mean?
Sometimes if you listen to like Blitzkrieg Bop, it doesn't have a solo in it.
Yeah, but most of the time there was something that would be the placeholder for where a solo would go. Even if it's just a little interlude or something, you know what I mean? I think grunge kind of picked up on that a little bit, but I think that looking at it now, I think that it's kind of a free for all. There's not really any one direction music's going in at all. There's not any dominant form of music right now. I mean, I guess you would say rap and hip hop is probably the most dominant form of music. I
mean, I guess so. I don't know. I guess it's hard to tell.
But what's funny about that is that it is in certain segments of society, and in other segments that are completely unaware of that. You know what I mean? And in other segments, there's people who are huge, and then if you walk 10 feet down the road, no one's ever heard of it. It's like that's kind of the world we're living in now. There's not like anybody who's like really a household name. You know what I mean? God, even I was a freaking was it McDonald's the other day with my kids, and there's I guess a Cardi B and Offset meal, and I didn't even know there was an artist called Offset. I had never heard of this person before.
And they have a meal?
They have a meal at McDonald's. I'm like, what?
What do they eat?
Dude, I was so horrified.
What does Cardi B have for lunch? Inquiring minds want to know.
Because really, she seems like the picture of pure perfect health.
You just twerk your chicken McNuggets into our delicious barbecue sauce.
That's how McNuggets are made.
Oh my God!
But that's what I'm saying. Like, I'd never heard of Offset in my life, and I'm a musician. You know, like, so that just shows you, like, there isn't so much like universal. Everybody knows who these people anymore. It's much more niche. Every genre is kind of niche now.
Can you just be like, I'd like to offset the cost of this Happy Meal and just put it on my tab?
Yes, this is going to be like offsets. I'm going to do when I'm buying my stocks. I'll make sure I have a stock offset. I'm sure that's what he's referring to. But no, I have no idea who these people are. And it's like, but I also,
did it come with the Offset playset?
The Offset action figure and stuff.
There's like 7 different Cardi B figures. There's like Cardi B A, Cardi B B, Cardi B C.
Yeah, and that's actually runs out right there. But no, it's. But here's what I'm trying to say. That not only that, there's not anything that's mainstream anymore, really, but also it's reminding me of my advanced age all the time too. Because like there's people who are like gigantic. I'm like, I've never heard of this person before. Like, who's Bad Bunny? What is Bad Bunny?
I don't know, but I think McDonald's needs to have like the Ozzy Osbourne Happy Meal.
Oh yeah,
right, where the chicken McNuggets,
just a raw bat.
Well, so wouldn't it be great if McDonald's, like, they've been making chicken McNuggets out of bat meat this whole time? But they bring Ozzy Osbourne on board for the marketing
just to really
campaign.
Play it up, yeah.
To
we would be very fortunate if it was
buy into it.
If it was only bat meat. We don't even want to know.
It's actually, the McNuggets are made out of released doves.
Yeah, exactly. They're vengefully murdered and taken, not treated well at all.
Ozzy bites the head off of every dove at the Tyson Dove
That's why he has
plant.
such a hard time these days, man. You know how tiring it is to bite the head off thousands of doves? I mean, come on.
Well,
hey, go on a break right now. No, let's keep biting those doves' heads off, Ozzy. Sharon. Yep. I'm sure that's how it is.
Right.
When Fast Food Nation 2 comes out, or 3, I think there's probably already been a 2, that we'll find out the truth. You know what I mean?
Super Size Me 4.
Exactly.
The Aussie years.
It's like the sequel to the Decline of Western Civilization. You know?
Yeah, right.
Same sort of thing. I don't know.
Oh my God.
That's a lot of.
They could do like and then the whole Prince angle, like when doves cry.
That's why they cry.
Yeah.
We don't know when they cry, but we know why they cry.
They're on their way to see Ozzy.
Yes, exactly.
That's why the doves are crying.
Get in the truck. Oh God!
And they all become McNuggets.
We're all gonna be fine, guys. Trust me, it's good. No, I don't even know what we're talking about anymore. Somehow we got on that. All I'm trying to say is that, like, look, I'm not aware of what art is. I'm not the arbiter of what's good or bad art. I'm not the person who decided, but I do think that most of the newer like bands in the rock genre, almost all of them, are doing at least cool solos. Not all of those guys are monster players, but some of them are, and some of them are just good players, and that good players play great solos too. You know what I mean?
It might be that they're really great players and they've got that gig.
It's true. You're right.
Right.
Or it could be that they're just the guys who are perfect for that gig. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I look at the guitar player for Rival Sons, for instance. He's a great guitar player.
Yeah, Scott Holiday's great.
But he's not like a shredder. But a shredder wouldn't fit in that band.
Right. Well, and I'm sure that's a player like him is probably like an iceberg, right? Like you're only seeing the tip of the iceberg.
I bet you're probably right. But for his gig, that would not be appropriate to be playing like sweep arpeggios and stuff like that.
And shout out to Cower Guitars from Elk Grove. They build those Firebirds that Scott Holiday plays.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Yes, there's a local connection there.
I didn't know that. That's cool. That's one of the better bands that come out in the last 15 years. Is that band? They're so good.
Oh yeah.
Actually, I saw they're doing like a Chevy commercial with one of their songs now, which is like that's rad.
There's that one Pressure in Time. That song, man. Their royalties must be like actually like maybe like all the way up to like $1 for that song because it's everywhere.
I was at the movies the other day, and I when they had the pre-movie like commercials and crap like that, that commercial, the ba-na-na-na.
Yeah, that's Pressure in Time.
Yeah, and I know exactly. I've heard that song. I know, but it's like, but people in that audience though probably hadn't heard that song. So if nothing else, it's exposing people to rock and roll that probably had never heard that kind of thing.
And man, that song came out like what, 10, 15 years ago?
2010, 2012, something like that.
Okay, yeah, so like closing in on 15 years.
They've got a few other really great tunes too.
Sure.
So it's
killer band.
Yeah, I feel like one of the guiding lights,
It's funny to me that Greta Van Fleet gets all the attention for being the modern day Led Zeppelin, but man, rival sons.
Well, they predated Greta Van Fleet,
right?
And were better than Greta Van Fleet then. You know,
singers.
I think the thing about Greta Van Fleet, and there's nothing. I have nothing against Greta Van Fleet; they're fine. But like they was kind of like the boy band thing. I think is why they kind of got so big. They had all the
you
kids.
think they got big when they were too young?
Well, I think they're like, look, these 18-year-olds. This is so cool. They're playing rock. It was like the novelty of that. Yeah. Whereas in Rival Sons, those guys were like late 20s, early 30s.
They were more fully realized.
Yeah, they were like they're adults playing rock and roll.
Yeah.
You know, and that wasn't like there's no novelty factor of dudes in their early 30s playing rock and roll. You know, even if it's great, you know, and it's kind of a throwback to like Zeppelin and Deep Purple and stuff like that. But I was like, no, that's cool. But I think the novelty of the youngness of Greta Van Fleet is why that band got so much attention.
So hey, they just keep, you know, they just stay persistent, and I promise Greta Van Fleet will not be young anymore.
That's true. At some point, they will become old.
Yes, Father Time will catch you.
You know what's the thing that makes me nervous though is whenever I see like a Sweetwater thing about this new band's, you know, a rig rundown or something like that, it's almost always a band I've never heard of before. And I'm a rock musician. That's what I do. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I've never heard of this band before. And that scares me. That means that there's bands out there that have a good following that are just these like little bubble followings where like nobody outside that bubble's ever heard of that band. You know what I mean? It's like that bums me out because it's so hard for any band to get mainstream attention or get big attention. It's always these like bubble attentions, if that makes sense. Like whatever following you can create on social media or, you know, your tour and there's like an underground cult following behind a band. And it's like, it seems like the days of like the Motley Crues or the Van Halens or Metallicas where like everybody, like your grandma knows who this band is. It seems like those days are kind of over. I can't imagine that's you know.
I wholeheartedly agree. Well, and that whole bubble, you know, following thing, well, that'll have to be a topic for another podcast about, you know, hey, we're in the future, and right. So.
There's actually a great Family Guy thing they did at the end of one of the episodes, like 10 years ago, I want to say it was, and they were talking about that. And like, you know, we could be famous as Jenna Marbles, and then Brian's like, who's that? And it's like, nobody knows, but she's famous. And it's like that's exactly true. It's like, yeah, this whole TV, he points to the Fox logo. Is like, yeah, this is over. You know, this is going to be these people who have these little YouTube channels. But the problem with the whole YouTube celebrity thing too, whether it be guitar, musical or not musical, is that it's got such a planned obsolescence. Like that you can only like be wacky, kooky guy doing wacky, kooky things for so long before the novelty wears off. You know what I mean? And then there's going to be another the horde. There'll be a new guy who does something different than what you do, but they'll usurp you within a couple years. And it's like, you know, you're gonna have dwindling followers after a certain time.
Well, and those implications, and again, for you know, perhaps we're going to go over this in a future podcast. But as a guitar instructor and recruiting students and all of that, I wonder what those implications really are.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. So there's a preview.
Yeah, so we'll pick this up on a future podcast. Let's wrap this one up though. So thank you so much for listening to the Rock Guitar Confidential Podcast with Brian and Scott. Please make sure to subscribe and rate this podcast and subscribe to our socials as well. And
make sure to like it too.
Yes, and like it
a lot.
Exactly. Yes, like almost uncomfortably. Stare too hard. Yeah, that's what you should do.
Yes.
And then we'll catch you on the next podcast. Thank you so much.